good evening, or perhaps good early morning. Tonight, I'd like you to let your thoughts drift far from the present moment. Let the quiet hum of your room fade gently. Imagine instead the slow, patient rhythm of waves against a wooden hull. Imagine the scent of salt in the air, mingled with tar, damp rope, and sun-warmed timber. Imagine yourself standing on the deck of a vast ship, sometime in the early 15th century, as it glides across the wide waters of the South China Sea. This is not a tale of sudden battles or dramatic storms, though such things did exist. Instead, it is a quieter journey. A journey into the daily routines and steady discipline, and the quiet endurance of the sailors who served aboard the great treasure ships of Admiral Zheng He. During the Ming Dynasty, we will move slowly through their world, through the rise of Zheng He himself, through the mysteries of lost shipwrecks, and finally into the still ordered life of the forbidden city far from the sea. For now, simply allow yourself to settle, breathe in slowly, and as you exhale, imagine that you are no longer in the present day. You are a sailor on a treasure ship, and the horizon stretches endlessly before you. Imagine yourself waking before dawn. The sky above you is not yet light, only a pale gray suggestion that the sun will soon rise. You lie on a woven mat in the lower deck of an enormous wooden vessel. The space is crowded, but orderly. Around you, other sailors stir quietly. There is no sudden noise, no shouted commands, just the soft rustle of fabric, the creak of timber, and the constant, patient sound of water pressing against the hull. You have been at sea for weeks. The treasure ship on which you serve is immense, far larger than most vessels of your time. Its hull rises high above the water, divided into watertight compartments. The masts tower overhead, supporting wide battened sails that catch even the faintest wind. When you first boarded, you might have felt a sense of awe at its size. Now it has become your entire world. The Ming Admiralty does not tolerate disorder. Each sailor has a role. Some manage the sails, some maintain the rigging, some stand watch, and others oversee supplies or assist in navigation. You might be assigned to haul lines, to scrub the deck, or to help maintain the ship's rudder. The work is repetitive, steady, and physically demanding, but rarely frantic. There is a rhythm to it. A constant struggle, yes, but one woven into the very pattern of your days. Imagine yourself climbing the rigging. The ropes are rough beneath your hands, stiff with salt. The wind presses against your face as you look out across the endless water. The horizon is a thin line where sea meets sky. Sometimes the sea is calm, its surface shimmering under the sun. Other times it rolls gently, lifting the ship in a slow, rocking motion that settles deep into your bones. Storms do come, of course. When dark clouds gather and the wind grows restless, the fleet moves with practiced coordination. Sails are reefed, lines secured, cargo checked. Orders are given clearly, without panic. The fleet of Zheng He, sometimes numbering hundreds of ships, operates as a disciplined organism. In such moments, you feel both very small and strangely protected, part of something vast and purposeful. But most days are not dramatic. Most days are long stretches of routine. You eat simple meals: rice, dried fish, perhaps preserved vegetables. Fresh water is carefully rationed. Large ceramic jars store supplies below deck. Food must be guarded against rot and pests. You quickly learn to appreciate small variations: a handful of beans, a slightly different preparation of grain. Hunger is not constant, but neither is abundance. And there are other challenges. Seasickness lingers for some sailors, especially those unaccustomed to long voyages. The ship's physician travels with the fleet, carrying herbs and remedies. Illness, when it comes, spreads quietly. There are no elaborate hospitals here, only small spaces set aside for the unwell. The air below deck can grow heavy, thick with the scent of damp wood and human proximity. Yet even illness is treated with calm efficiency. You would not witness graphic scenes, only the quiet knowledge that some lives may be shortened by fever or weakness. When a sailor's strength fades beyond recovery, the crew conducts simple rites. The sea receives him without spectacle. The fleet moves on. And always, there is discipline. You stand watch at night, scanning the darkness for signal lanterns from other ships. The fleet communicates through flags by day and lights by night. Even in the vastness of the ocean, you are never alone. The treasure ships travel together, a floating city bound by hierarchy and shared purpose. Sometimes, when the weather is clear, you might see distant land. A thin strip of green along the horizon, the promise of fresh water, new trade goods, and unfamiliar languages. The fleet's mission is diplomatic and commercial, not merely exploratory. You carry silk, porcelain, and gifts from the Ming Emperor. You represent an empire that sees itself as the center of the world. But as a sailor, your perspective is more immediate. Your concerns are the tightness of the rope in your hands, the angle of the wind, the condition of the hull. You feel the sun on your shoulders during the day, and the cool dampness of night settling over the deck. You sleep lightly, accustomed to the ship's motion. There are moments of quiet beauty. You are not a noble envoy. You are not Admiral Zheng He himself. You are one thread in a vast tapestry of imperial ambition. And yet, without threads like you, the tapestry would unravel. Imagine the fleet entering a foreign harbor. The ships anchor in formation. Local rulers approach in smaller boats. There is ceremony, gift exchange, careful negotiation. You remain mostly in the background, adjusting sails, securing lines, observing from a respectful distance. The grandeur of the Ming court is carried in the cargo holds, in the silk banners, in the carefully wrapped porcelain. Then, when trade is complete, when alliances are affirmed, you depart once more. The ocean resumes its steady rhythm. Days blur into weeks. The rhythm of their lives, your life, is measured not by clocks, but by watches, by tides, by the rising and setting of the sun. It is a life of endurance rather than glory, of repetition rather than spectacle. And perhaps that is what it truly was like to sail with Zheng He. Not an endless sequence of dramatic adventures, but a sustained, disciplined journey across immense distances. A constant negotiation between human ambition and the indifferent sea. As we gently leave the deck for now, imagine the ship continuing forward, its sails full, its hull steady. The ocean stretches endlessly around it, carrying not only goods and envoys, but stories that will one day sink beneath the waves, waiting to be rediscovered. Now, as the steady rhythm of the sea continues in the background of your imagination, let us gently shift our focus. Step away from the deck for a moment. Leave behind the rough rope and the salt-streaked wood. Instead, imagine a young boy in the highlands of Yunnan in the late 14th century. His name, at birth, is Ma He. His early life is shaped not by the sea, but by upheaval. Yunnan, once under Mongol control, becomes a contested region as the Ming Dynasty consolidates power. Armies move across landscapes that had once seemed stable. In the quiet valleys and hills, ordinary lives are disrupted. Ma He's world changes abruptly when Ming forces capture him as a child. He is taken far from home, brought into imperial service, and eventually enters the palace as a eunuch. This is not a dramatic scene filled with spectacle. It is, instead, a quiet turning point, a life redirected. Within the palace walls, Ma He grows into adulthood, surrounded by ritual, hierarchy, and the steady pulse of imperial administration. He learns discipline. He learns observation. He learns how power moves not loudly, but through networks of loyalty and favor. Over time, he earns the trust of the Yongle Emperor, one of the most ambitious rulers of the Ming Dynasty. Imagine the emperor's court, vast halls with polished floors, officials in layered robes, incense drifting upward in thin spirals. Discussions are measured and formal. Decisions, when made, ripple outward across the empire. The Yongle emperor seeks to project authority beyond China's borders. The Ming court does not view itself as merely one kingdom among many. It sees itself as the center of the Middle Kingdom radiating cultural and political gravity. And so, plans are drawn. Shipyards along the Yangtze River expand. Timber is gathered from distant forests. Craftsmen labor patiently, shaping hulls and masts. Rope is braided. Sails are stitched. Ceramic jars are filled. Silk bolts are wrapped carefully for transport. He, now known as Zheng He, is appointed to command these voyages. It is a remarkable appointment. A former captive, now entrusted with leading one of the largest maritime expeditions in history. Imagine him standing before the fleet. He is not a reckless adventurer. He is methodical, composed. His authority does not need to be shouted. It is carried in posture, in expectation, in the quiet knowledge that he represents the emperor himself. The first voyage begins in 1405. Hundreds of ships leave port. Among them are the immense treasure ships, accompanied by supply vessels, troop transports, horse carriers, and patrol boats. Tens of thousands of men are aboard: sailors, soldiers, translators, doctors, craftsmen. The fleet moves southward, stopping in what is now Vietnam, Thailand, and the Malay Peninsula. Ports open to them cautiously at first. Local rulers assess the scale of what approaches. There is ceremony. Envoys exchange gifts. Silk and porcelain are presented alongside finely worked metal and lacquerware. In return, exotic goods are offered: spices, hardwoods, rare animals. The voyages are diplomatic missions wrapped in grandeur. Yet beneath the ceremony lies quiet tension. Power is being displayed not through conquest alone, but through presence. The fleet's sheer size communicates a message. The Ming Empire is vast, organized, and capable of reaching far shores. On later voyages, Zheng He's fleet crosses the Indian Ocean. Imagine the ships passing Sri Lanka, sailing along the coast of India, entering the busy ports of Calicut. The air here smells different, spiced with unfamiliar aromas. The languages shift. Clothing, architecture, and customs vary from what you have known. The fleet adapts. Translators mediate exchanges. Agreements are negotiated. Tribute relationships are established. In some cases, when diplomacy falters, force is used, but even then, it is measured. The goal is stability, recognition, and trade. By the time of the fourth and fifth voyages, the fleet pushes farther west. It reaches the Arabian Peninsula. It sails to the eastern coast of Africa. Imagine giraffes brought aboard as diplomatic gifts, towering gently in enclosed spaces, bewildering and extraordinary to those who had never seen such creatures before. These voyages are not frantic expansions. They are deliberate circuits, establishing connections, reaffirming alliances, returning to ports already visited. And through it all, Zheng He remains a steady presence. He navigates not only oceans, but court politics. The Ming court itself is not static. Factions debate the value of these expensive expeditions. The voyages are costly. Timber, labor, provisions, these are not small expenditures. Each departure requires careful planning and imperial approval. When the Yongle emperor dies, support for the voyages fluctuates. Imagine Zheng He in his later years. Older now, seasoned by years at sea. His authority is unquestioned within the fleet, but the political winds in Beijing grow uncertain. The seventh voyage, begun in 1431, will be among the last. He travels once more across familiar waters. Ports greet him with recognition. The rhythm of departure and arrival, ceremony and exchange has become almost ritualistic. But there is a subtle awareness that this era may be drawing to a close. Zheng He does not return from that final voyage. He likely dies at sea, though the exact details remain unclear. His life, shaped by upheaval and elevated by imperial trust, ends in the element that defined his legacy. After his death, the voyages cease. The Ming court turns inward. Shipyards fall quiet. Some records are archived, others possibly lost. Maritime ambitions recede as priorities shift toward internal stability and northern defense. And so, the great fleets, once a moving symbol of imperial power, fade from the horizon. But their impact lingers. They altered trade routes, reshaped diplomatic networks, and left impressions in ports across Asia and Africa. They demonstrated what a centralized, disciplined state could project across vast distances. As you reflect on Zheng He's life, notice its quiet arc, from captive child to admiral, from inland valleys to open ocean, from palace corridors to distant shores. It is not a story of sudden rebellion or reckless ambition. It is a story of adaptation, of loyalty, of measured expansion under imperial vision. And now, as the fleet continues its imagined glide across the Indian Ocean, let us allow the surface of the sea to grow darker. Because beneath those waters, over centuries, some of these ships did not survive. Their hulls, once towering and proud, came to rest on the ocean floor. And it is there, in the silent depths, that our next chapter waits. Now, allow the image of the great fleet to soften. The sails that once filled with wind have long since fallen silent. The voices of sailors, the creak of timber, the careful instructions shouted across decks, all have faded into memory. What remains, in some places, lies far below the surface of the sea. Imagine yourself descending slowly into clear, blue water. The sunlight grows dimmer as you sink deeper. The ocean, which once seemed restless and alive, becomes still and suspended. In this quiet world, time moves differently. Sand drifts lazily. Fish weave between shadows. And there, resting on the seabed, are the remains of a wooden hull. It is not dramatic, not shattered in spectacular ruin. Instead, it lies partially buried, ribs exposed like the frame of a long-forgotten structure. The timber is darkened by centuries beneath salt water. Ceramics spill gently from what was once a cargo hold, now scattered across the sand. This is one of the many shipwrecks discovered in the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean, silent witnesses to maritime trade and imperial ambition. Some of these ships date to the Ming era, others to earlier or later dynasties. Not all can be definitively linked to Zheng He's fleet, yet together they tell a story of an ocean thick with movement, commerce, and risk. Imagine the moment such a ship was lost. Perhaps a storm rose unexpectedly. Winds shifted. Waves grew heavy and persistent. The ship, built with skill and reinforced by watertight bulkheads, resisted as long as it could. But timber and rope, however sturdy, have limits. The sea, patient and indifferent, eventually claimed its due. There is no need to imagine chaos in detail. Simply understand that lives were shortened. That cargo, intended for distant markets, settled instead into silence. That the rhythm of one ship's journey came to an abrupt end. And then, for centuries, nothing. The ocean covered the wreck. Coral began to grow along the beams. Small creatures found shelter among the timbers. The ship became part of the underwater landscape. It is only in modern times that divers and archaeologists have begun to rediscover these sites. Picture a research vessel hovering above coordinates marked carefully on a map. Divers descend with slow precision. Sediment is brushed away gently. Each object is documented, measured, preserved. Porcelain bowls emerge from the sand still intact, glazed in pale blue and white. Bronze mirrors, iron anchors, coins bearing imperial inscriptions. These objects, once ordinary tools of trade in daily life, become artifacts of extraordinary value. They whisper of networks, of silk leaving Chinese ports and spices returning, of ceramics traveling across oceans to be used in distant kitchens, of merchants who navigated by stars and currents long before modern instruments existed. One particularly famous discovery, The so-called Nanhai No 1-inch shipwreck revealed a southern Song Dynasty vessel filled with tens of thousands of artifacts. Though earlier than Zheng He, it demonstrates the deep history of Chinese maritime trade. And in Southeast Asia, scattered finds suggest the complexity of these routes. Each wreck is a fragment of a much larger pattern. Archaeologists reconstruct trade networks through cargo manifests written in brittle ink, through isotopic analysis of ceramics, through the timber itself identifying which forests supplied the wood. The mystery is not simply how a ship sank. It is how these voyages reshaped the world quietly, persistently, beneath the notice of many chroniclers. You might imagine holding one of those porcelain bowls. It feels smooth and cool in your hands. Its surface, once new and gleaming, has dulled slightly under centuries of mineral contact. Yet it remains whole. Shifting sands conceal what researchers once believed was certain. The sea guards its secrets with quiet persistence. Imagine yourself hovering above such a site. You cannot see it directly. Instruments suggest something lies below, perhaps the faint outline of timbers beneath layers of sediment. The mystery remains. It invites patience rather than urgency. This is the nature of maritime archaeology. It is slow. It requires careful documentation. It demands respect for context. There are no dramatic unveilings, only gradual revelation, one artifact at a time. And through these discoveries, a clearer image emerges of the Ming world, not isolated, not static, but deeply connected to East Africa, to Arabia, to India, to Southeast Asia. The voyages of Zheng He were not isolated curiosities. They were part of a vast maritime system that pulsed with exchange. The rhythm of their lives, your imagined life as a sailor, was tied to this network. The cargo you loaded, the ports you entered, the gifts you carried all formed threads in a global tapestry. Now, as we gently rise back toward the surface, notice how the light brightens again. The sea is no longer only a place of labor and endurance. It is also an archive, a quiet museum beneath the waves. And yet, while ships traversed oceans and some sank into obscurity, far inland another world continued its own measured rhythm. A world of marble courtyards, lacquered pillars, and precise ceremonial order. Let us leave the ocean behind and travel, slowly and calmly, back to Beijing, back to the heart of Ming power, back to the Forbidden City, where life followed a different rhythm entirely. Now, allow the sound of waves to fade completely. In their place, imagine the soft echo of footsteps across stone. You stand before immense red walls. Their surface is smooth and deliberate, stretching wide beneath a pale northern sky. Golden roof tiles catch the light in muted brilliance. The air here is different, drier than the sea breeze, scented faintly with incense and polished wood. You are in Beijing in the early 15th century. Before you lies the Forbidden City, newly established as the political heart of the Ming Dynasty. Under the Yongle Emperor, this place remained fixed, geometric, and carefully ordered. Imagine yourself walking through the Meridian Gate. The scale of the architecture is designed not to overwhelm in noise, but in quiet authority. Vast courtyards open one after another, aligned with mathematical precision. Each threshold marks a shift in status. Each doorway narrows access. Movement here is never accidental. It is choreographed. Life within these walls unfolds according to ritual. At dawn, officials assemble in prescribed ranks. Their robes indicate position. Colors and insignia communicate hierarchy without words. They kneel, bow, rise, and bow again. The emperor sits elevated, framed by carved screens and heavy drapery. He does not shout. Authority radiates through stillness. Imagine yourself as a low-ranking palace attendant. Your day begins early. You sweep stone courtyards, polish wooden balustrades, refill bronze braziers. You move quietly, careful not to disturb the careful balance of space and order. Your existence is largely unseen, yet essential. The rhythm of your life is steady and repetitive. Meals are prepared in vast palace kitchens, rice steamed in enormous quantities, vegetables sliced with precision, meat prepared according to seasonal guidelines. The emperor's table is elaborate, but structured. Dishes are arranged according to symbolic meaning as much as taste. In contrast to the sailors' rationed meals at sea, here food is abundant, but controlled. Even luxury follows rules. Imagine the inner court. Beyond the grand halls lies the residential heart of the palace. Here live the emperor's consorts, concubines, and eunuchs. Corridors connect private chambers adorned with silk screens and carved furniture. Gardens provide carefully arranged landscapes, rock formations, ponds, meticulously trimmed trees. You walk along a covered passageway. The scent of flowering plants drifts gently in the air. A fountain murmurs softly. The world beyond the walls feels distant, almost unreal. Yet tension exists here as well. Power within the Forbidden City is subtle and layered. Eunuchs manage communication. Scholars debate policy in measured tones. Imperial decrees ripple outward across provinces, shaping lives that the emperor will never directly witness. Imagine a morning audience. A tribute delegation from a distant land presents gifts. Rare animals, precious metals, exotic goods. These offerings are carefully recorded. The symbolism is clear. The emperor sits at the center of a world that acknowledges his authority. In reality, diplomacy is more complex. But within these walls, ritual transforms complexity into clarity. The emperor's supremacy is reaffirmed through choreography and repetition. While sailors endure storms and ration water, palace life revolves around stillness and observation. You might imagine the emperor walking through his private garden at dusk. Lanterns glow softly. Advisors wait at a respectful distance. The emperor's decisions carry immense weight. Whether to fund another maritime expedition, whether to fortify northern borders, whether to alter tax policies. Each decision shapes countless unseen lives. And yet, from within the palace, the world can seem abstract. Maps are unfurled in audience halls, showing coastlines traced by Zheng He's fleet. Reports describe distant ports and diplomatic exchanges. The ocean, vast and unpredictable, becomes lines of ink and careful summaries. There is a quiet irony here. The sailors who braved winds and waves will never see these halls. And many within these halls will never feel the salt spray of the sea. Two rhythms coexist. The rhythm of their lives at sea, steady, physical, shaped by wind and current. And the rhythm of life in the Forbidden City, measured, ceremonial, shaped by hierarchy and tradition. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the imperial garden as evening settles. Lantern light flickers against painted beams. The sky darkens to deep blue. Somewhere in the distance, a gong sounds softly to mark the hour. The city beyond the walls hums faintly, but here the air remains composed. This is power expressed not through movement, but through permanence. The treasure fleets eventually fade. The shipyards grow quiet, but the Forbidden City endures. Its walls solid, its courtyards aligned, its rituals repeated day after day. And as you consider these contrasting worlds, notice how they connect. Without imperial vision, the fleets would not have sailed. Without sailors, the emperor's ambitions would have remained confined to parchment. Without the ocean's trade routes, the tribute halls would have been emptier. Everything is interwoven. The sea and the stone, the rope and the silk, the rationed bowl of rice and the carefully plated banquet. Now, as our journey draws gently toward its end, allow these images to soften. The treasure ships continue on their distant paths. The shipwrecks rest quietly beneath the waves. The Forbidden City stands in composed silence beneath the northern sky. You return slowly to the present moment. Perhaps you notice how different your own surroundings. Feel how steady the ground beneath you is. How predictable the walls around you are. How distant the uncertainty of ocean voyages seems. History, when approached calmly, reveals not only grand narratives but quiet patterns. The rhythm of their lives, the constant negotiation between ambition and endurance. And as you settle deeper into rest, let the sound of imagined waves blend gently with the silence around you. The fleet sails on, the palace gates close softly, and you, here in the present, can drift peacefully into sleep.